Did you know that in 16th century Prague, a rabbi allegedly created a living being from mud and clay to protect his community from persecution? This creature, known as the Golem, would become one of the most haunting and powerful figures in Jewish folklore, blurring the lines between divine creation and human ambition in ways that still captivate us today. Welcome back to Forgotten Lore, where we uncover the hidden histories that shaped our world. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into one of the most enigmatic legends ever told, a story that combines ancient mysticism, desperate protection, and the eternal question of what it truly means to create life. The Golem legend isn't just another folklore tale, it's a profound exploration of power, responsibility, and the dangerous territory we enter when we attempt to play God. Picture this: medieval Europe, where Jewish communities lived under constant threat of persecution, false accusations, and violent pogroms. In this world of uncertainty and fear, imagine the desperate hope that drove people to believe in the possibility of creating an artificial protector, a guardian made from the very earth beneath their feet. This is where our story begins, in the shadowy realm where desperation meets mysticism, and where one of history's most compelling legends was born. The word golem itself comes from the Hebrew language, appearing even in ancient biblical texts where it refers to an unformed or incomplete substance. In the Book of Psalms, the term describes the embryonic state before God breathes life into creation. This biblical foundation would prove crucial to understanding why the golem legend resonated so powerfully within Jewish communities throughout the centuries. But the golem we're exploring today isn't just a biblical concept. It evolved into something far more complex and fascinating through centuries of storytelling, mystical interpretation, and cultural transmission. The most famous version of the legend centers on Rabbi Judah Loew ben Bezalel, known as the Maharal of Prague, who lived during the late 16th century in what is now the Czech Republic. Let me paint you a picture of Prague in the 1580s. The city was a melting pot of cultures, religions, and tensions. Emperor Rudolf II ruled from Prague Castle, creating an atmosphere where alchemy, mysticism, and scholarly pursuits flourished alongside political intrigue and religious persecution. The Jewish quarter, called Josefov, housed a vibrant community that contributed significantly to the city's intellectual and economic life. Yet they remained vulnerable to the whims of popular opinion and imperial politics. Rabbi Loew was no ordinary religious leader. He was a towering intellectual figure, renowned for his scholarship in Jewish law, philosophy, and mysticism. Born around 1520, he had studied in Poland and served communities across Central Europe before arriving in Prague in 1573. His reputation as a scholar and spiritual leader made him one of the most respected figures in the Jewish world of his time. According to the legend, Rabbi Loew became deeply troubled by the increasing persecution his community faced. Blood libel accusations, where Jews were falsely accused of murdering Christian children for ritualistic purposes, were becoming more frequent and dangerous. These fabricated charges often led to violent attacks on Jewish communities, and Rabbi Loew felt the weight of responsibility to protect his people. The creation story itself reads like something from a mystical thriller. On a fateful night, Rabbi Loew allegedly gathered his most trusted disciples and led them to the banks of the Vltava River, just outside Prague. Working by moonlight, they began the sacred and dangerous process of creating artificial life. The rabbi shaped a human figure from the riverbank clay, crafting it with meticulous care and attention to every detail. But clay alone wasn't enough. The creation of the golem required deep knowledge of Kabbalah, the mystical tradition of Jewish spirituality that deals with the hidden aspects of divine creation. Rabbi Loew allegedly walked 7 times around the clay figure, reciting specific combinations of letters from the Hebrew alphabet. These weren't random words or prayers. They were precise formulations based on mystical interpretations of divine names and creative forces. The climactic moment came when Rabbi Loew placed a piece of parchment containing the sacred word emet, meaning truth, either into the golem's mouth or onto its forehead. Some versions of the story describe this word being carved directly into the creature's forehead. The moment this sacred word took effect, the clay figure allegedly drew its first breath and opened its eyes, becoming a living, breathing servant of its creator. The newly animated golem was described as a massive, powerful figure, standing taller than any normal human and possessing supernatural strength. Unlike humans, however, it had no soul in the traditional sense, no capacity for independent thought or moral reasoning. It was a perfect servant, capable of following instructions with absolute obedience, but lacking the divine spark that makes humans capable of creativity, love, or spiritual growth. Rabbi Loew named his creation Joseph, after the biblical figure, and dressed it in the clothes of a synagogue servant. To the outside world, Joseph appeared to be simply another member of the Jewish community, perhaps a bit unusually large and quiet, but not obviously supernatural. This disguise was crucial for the golem's mission of protecting the community without drawing unwanted attention from hostile authorities. The golem's protective duties were legendary in scope and effectiveness. According to the tales passed down through generations, Joseph would patrol the Jewish quarter at night, his supernatural senses alert to any threats against the community. When anti-Semitic mobs gathered, the golem would appear and scatter them with its incredible strength. When false accusations were made against Jews, Joseph would somehow uncover the truth and expose the real perpetrators. One of the most famous stories tells of how the golem prevented a blood libel accusation by catching the real perpetrator in the act of attempting to plant evidence in a Jewish home. In another tale, Joseph single-handedly stopped a violent mob from attacking the synagogue, standing like an immovable guardian at the entrance until the attackers fled in terror. These stories weren't just entertaining folklore, they represented the deep longing of a persecuted community for protection and justice. But the golem legend contains a crucial warning about the dangers of artificial creation. As powerful as Joseph was in protecting the Jewish community, it remained a creature without a soul, incapable of moral judgment or emotional understanding. It could only follow instructions, and this limitation would eventually become its downfall. The traditional stories tell us that over time, the golem began to exhibit disturbing behavior. Some versions describe it becoming increasingly violent, unable to distinguish between real threats and minor annoyances. Others suggest that it began to act independently, no longer waiting for specific commands from Rabbi Loew. The creature that had been created to protect was becoming a potential danger to those it was meant to serve. The most dramatic versions of the legend describe a specific incident that forced Rabbi Loew to deactivate his creation. According to some tellings, the golem fell in love with a human woman and became violently jealous when she rejected its advances. In other versions, it began attacking innocent people, its lack of moral reasoning making it incapable of understanding the difference between justice and vengeance. Faced with this crisis, Rabbi Loew made the difficult decision to end his creation's existence. The deactivation process was as mystical and dramatic as the original animation. The rabbi waited until the Sabbath, when the golem traditionally rested, and then reversed the creation process. He removed the sacred word from the creature's forehead or mouth, and the mighty Joseph collapsed back into lifeless clay. But here's where the legend takes on an even more mysterious dimension. According to Prague folklore, Rabbi Loew didn't simply dispose of the clay remains. Instead, he secretly carried them up to the attic of the old new synagogue, where they remain to this day. The attic was sealed, and strict instructions were given that no one should ever disturb the golem's remains. This aspect of the legend has created centuries of speculation and mystery. The old new synagogue still stands in Prague's Jewish quarter, and its attic remains officially off-limits to visitors. Local guides love to tell tourists that the golem's remains rest somewhere in that sealed space above the ancient prayer hall, waiting for the day when the Jewish community might need its protection again. The historical reality behind these legends is both more complex and more fascinating than the dramatic stories might suggest. Rabbi Judah Loew, Ben Bezalel, was indeed a real historical figure, and his intellectual achievements were genuinely remarkable. He wrote extensively on Jewish law and philosophy, established important educational institutions, and was widely respected throughout the Jewish world of his time. However, the earliest written accounts connecting Rabbi Loew, specifically to golem creation, don't appear until the 19th century, more than 200 years after his death. This doesn't necessarily mean the stories are entirely fictional. Oral traditions often preserve historical events for centuries before being written down. But it does suggest that the tales evolved significantly over time. The concept of creating artificial life from clay has much deeper roots in Jewish tradition than the Prague legend alone. The Talmud, the vast collection of Jewish legal and spiritual commentary, contains several discussions about the theoretical possibility of creating artificial humans through mystical means. These weren't presented as fantasy stories, but as serious theological discussions about the nature of creation and the limits of human knowledge. One Talmudic passage describes great rabbis of the ancient world who allegedly created calves from earth and ate them for dinner, treating artificial creation as a kind of advanced spiritual achievement rather than forbidden magic. Another text mentions a rabbi who created a man and sent it to another great sage, who immediately recognized it as artificial because it couldn't speak. These ancient discussions reveal something profound about Jewish attitudes toward creation and artificial life. Unlike many religious traditions that view human attempts to create life as inherently blasphemous, Jewish mystical thought often treated such endeavors as the highest form of spiritual achievement, a way of emulating divine creativity rather than challenging it. The Kabbalistic tradition that supposedly enabled the Golem's creation was itself a complex and sophisticated system of mystical thought. Kabbalah teaches that creation occurs through combinations of Hebrew letters, which are seen not just as symbols, but as fundamental building blocks of reality itself. According to this worldview, someone who truly understood the divine names and their combinations could theoretically manipulate the forces of creation. This mystical framework provided the theological foundation for Golem legends. The creation of artificial life wasn't seen as magic in the fantasy sense, but as applied mystical knowledge, a practical application of deep spiritual understanding. This distinction was crucial for maintaining the legend's credibility within Jewish communities that valued both rational thought and spiritual practice. The social context that gave rise to Golem legends cannot be overstated. Medieval and early modern Jewish communities lived under constant threat of persecution, forced conversion, expulsion, and violence. The blood libel accusations that feature so prominently in Golem stories were a real and devastating phenomenon that claimed countless innocent lives across Europe. In this environment, the idea of a supernatural protector held enormous psychological appeal. The Golem represented not just physical protection, but a kind of cosmic justice, the possibility that divine power might intervene on behalf of the oppressed. These stories provided hope and comfort to communities that often had little recourse to conventional forms of protection or justice. The legend also reflects deeper anxieties about power and responsibility. The Golem's eventual need for deactivation serves as a warning about the dangers of creating powerful beings without souls or moral reasoning. This theme resonates with modern concerns about artificial intelligence and autonomous systems, making the ancient legend surprisingly relevant to contemporary discussions. As Jewish communities migrated and scattered throughout the world, they carried Golem legends with them, adapting the stories to new contexts and circumstances. In Eastern European folklore, golems became associated with various rabbis and communities, each developing their own local variations of the basic story. Some versions emphasize the golem's role as a servant, describing creatures that helped with household tasks and synagogue maintenance in addition to their protective duties. Others focused on the mystical aspects of creation, turning the legend into a teaching tool for discussing Kabbalistic concepts and the nature of divine versus human creativity. The legend took on new dimensions during the 19th and 20th centuries as Jewish writers and artists began incorporating golem themes into modern literature and theater. The German Jewish writer Gustav Meyrink published an influential novel called Der Golem in 1915, which reimagined the legend as a psychological horror story set in a surreal version of Prague's Jewish quarter. This literary treatment helped introduce Golem legends to non-Jewish audiences, while also transforming the story's meaning and impact. Meyrink's Golem was less a protective guardian and more a manifestation of collective unconscious fears and desires, reflecting the psychological theories that were emerging in early 20th century thought. The rise of cinema provided another avenue for Golem stories to evolve and reach new audiences. Several silent films in the 1910s and 1920s brought the legend to movie screens, often emphasizing the horror and mystery aspects while sometimes losing the original spiritual and protective meanings. These adaptations reveal how folklore evolves as it moves between different cultural contexts and media forms. Each retelling necessarily emphasizes certain aspects while downplaying others, gradually shifting the story's meaning and impact across generations and communities. World War II and the Holocaust added tragic new dimensions to Golem legends. Some survivors and witnesses reported that during the darkest days of Nazi persecution, rumors circulated about the Golem of Prague awakening to defend the Jewish community once again. These stories, whether factual or mythical, demonstrate the enduring power of the legend to provide hope and meaning during times of extreme crisis. The post-war period saw renewed scholarly interest in Golem legends as historians and anthropologists began studying folklore more systematically. Researchers discovered that similar artificial being legends existed in many cultures around the world, from the Greek myths of Pygmalion to Islamic stories of jinn creation, suggesting that the desire to create artificial life represents a universal human fascination. Modern Jewish communities have continued to find relevance in Golem stories, often interpreting them as metaphors for contemporary challenges and opportunities. Some see parallels between ancient Golem creation and modern biotechnology, or artificial intelligence research, viewing the legend as a cautionary tale about the responsibilities that come with the power to create artificial life. The theological implications of Golem legends remain rich subjects for discussion and interpretation. Questions about what constitutes life, consciousness, and moral responsibility that were raised by these ancient stories continue to challenge philosophers, scientists, and religious thinkers today. In contemporary Prague, the Golem legend has become an important part of the city's tourist identity and cultural heritage. Visitors can take Golem-themed walking tours through the Jewish quarter, visit museums that explore the legend's history and significance, and even purchase Golem-themed souvenirs and artwork. This commercialization of the legend raises interesting questions about how folklore functions in modern societies, while tourist interest helps preserve awareness of these important stories. It can also lead to simplified or sensationalized versions that lose the deeper spiritual and historical meanings. The Old New Synagogue continues to maintain its mysterious sealed attic. Neither confirming nor denying the presence of Golem remains. This ambiguity is perhaps perfect for a legend that has always existed in the borderland between history and mythology, fact and faith. Recent academic research has revealed new dimensions of Golem legends, including their connections to broader European folklore traditions and their influence on later literary and artistic movements. Scholars have traced how the stories evolved as they spread through different Jewish communities, adapted to local concerns and cultural contexts. The digital age has provided new platforms for Golem stories to evolve and reach global audiences. Online communities discuss the legends, create new interpretations and adaptations, and explore their relevance to contemporary issues like artificial intelligence ethics and biotechnology regulation. Some modern Jewish artists and writers have reclaimed the Golem as a symbol of Jewish creativity and resilience, moving beyond the traditional protective guardian role to explore themes of identity, diaspora, and cultural survival. These contemporary interpretations demonstrate how ancient legends continue to generate new meanings and applications. The enduring appeal of Golem legends speaks to fundamental human concerns about creation, protection, power, and responsibility that transcend any particular historical period or cultural context. Whether we view these stories as literal accounts, symbolic teachings, or collective psychological expressions, they continue to offer insights into human nature and the eternal questions that shape our understanding of life itself. As we conclude our exploration of this enigmatic figure from Jewish folklore, we're left with more questions than answers, which is perhaps exactly as it should be. The Golem legend reminds us that the most powerful stories are those that resist simple explanations, that continue to reveal new meanings and applications as we encounter them in different circumstances and stages of life. The next time you find yourself in Prague's Jewish quarter, walking through those ancient streets where Rabbi Loew once studied and taught, remember that you're treading in the footsteps of one of history's most enduring legends. Whether the Golem was real or mythical, its story continues to shape how we think about creation, protection, and the mysterious forces that govern our world. What do you think about the Golem legend? Does it represent humanity's eternal desire to create life, or our need for protection in an uncertain world? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Forgotten Lore for more deep dives into the hidden histories that continue to influence our modern world. Until next time, keep exploring the mysteries that surround us.